No intro, let's get on with the video. The criteria for the easiest to hardest heroes to rank up with will be based upon their skill to reward ratio, which are broken down into their sustain, range, mobility, utility, and damage. Sustain refers to how much damage the tank can absorb whilst holding or taking space. Range refers to the distance at which a tank can pressure at. Mobility refers to the speed or movement the tank can use to pressure with. Utility is just basically any resource that isn't damage or healing, and damage is just how much pressure a tank can exert. You'll see a trend that the heroes that are easiest to climb with typically have high damage and either high mobility or moderate range. Sustain and utility aren't key factors to how hard a hero can carry, but they are nice add-ons and can sometimes carry fights alone. Starting off in last place, we have Orisa. Orisa can be a great pick against dive tanks, thanks to a high sustain and fortify, being able to both shoot and shield, as well as the decent utility and halt in punishing anyone who overextends. However, getting people to follow up on your utility can be quite a challenge, and Orisa's main issue is that she has no consistent way to carry fights, unlike the heroes above her. She has no massive power spike, halts require team coordination, your shield is static, there's no reliable way to farm supercharger, and your gun is mediocre. Not to mention, you actually move slower when shooting. However, who knows how she'll be coming into Overwatch 2. Next up we have Reinhardt. The reason why Reinhardt is so tough to rank up with, especially in solo queue, is because he has both limited range and limited mobility, despite having great damage. This means that if there's a pocket soldier on a dangerous angle, you can basically do fuck all in solo queue. Have fun relying on your incompetent off-tank player marking the soldier. Now in a team environment, this might be different and we might see the Reinhardt take the 6v4 or 5v4 and walk over the enemy team, but good luck coordinating this in your rank games. However, unlike Orisa, Reinhardt can actually carry games through the cleave damage she can do with hammer swings, fire strikes on corners, and farming shatter as fast as you can. I recently did a VOD with professional coach Stocks, and shatter is the way you win games in Reinhardt, not just in terms of using it, but how fast you can charge it. Rein has pretty high sustain thanks to a 1600 HP shield, which is a nice add-on. Now moving on to heroes that aren't too shabby when it comes to taking the game into their own hands. First off we have Winston. Now for those who don't know, Boga actually managed to one-trick Winston all the way to GM, but this wasn't your typical unranked GM from a random streamer, as Boga managed to do this with no sound, no HUD, no VC, no outlines, 50% render, 150 ping with 4 DCs, and stream sniper throwers. Now, whilst Overwatch might be in graveyard season, you can't deny how impressive this is. Winston's ultimate, if mastered, can absolutely be a carry tool against most players, and its bubble can actually be a resilient tool to avoid some CC, unlike Wrecking Ball for example. So why isn't Winston any higher? Well, for the average player, the game sense and skill for Winston to carry like this takes years of mastery. Winston's damage isn't too impressive either, and just like Reinhardt and Orisa to a lesser extent, Winston's range is basically non-existent, though he does make up for it with higher mobility than both of those tanks. Squishy heroes do need to respect the damage Winston can do, especially considering how annoying he can be with that protective bubble. Next up we have D.Va. D.Va's strength lies in her versatility thanks to her high mobility and utility stats. If there's a soldier on an off angle that needs marking, D.Va's gonna be there with the defense matrix and micro missiles. Her damage up close can also be more than you think, and with 600 HP, a ton of armor, and the defense matrix which boosts her sustain, it's no surprise that D.Va adopts a unique role in the off-tank category. However, D.Va has two main issues. Firstly, unless you're outright killing someone on that off angle, which you likely won't in higher ranks, your ability to carry and rank up higher is limited. You can mark all the angles you want, but if your team aren't going to use that to their advantage, D.Va can feel a bit limiting. Secondly, D.Va has a very high skill ceiling because of how versatile she is, choosing what option to do, when and why. For example, choosing between peeling and diving can be hard to master. Also, note how everyone above D.Va from now on has comparable or higher damage stats. Next, we have Wrecking Ball. His outstanding mobility and respectable damage, especially when factoring in his techs, make him a relatively easy pick to climb with. Him being one of the only hit scan tanks also give him mediocre range, and having adaptive shields also aid a sustain. However, likewise to D.Va, Wrecking Ball's main problem is with how much skill it takes to get the full reward from him. Mechanically speaking, his techs are quite difficult and are unlike any other hero in the game, aside from Doomfist perhaps, and game sense wise, well, good luck playing Ball into heavy CC comps like Cassidy, Sombra, Brig, Bap. However, Ball's higher damage, mobility, and range than D.Va lands him a spot above her. Onto the next tier, we have one hero, being Zarya. The Russian weightlifter boasts very high damage on high charge, which can single-handedly carry fights. Zarya's personal bubble also adds some very important sustain to help Zarya hold any angles she takes and can be a failsafe for when she gets dove. However, the biggest issue with Zarya that prevents her from being top tier is how reliant she is on her energy to do anything, and her inability to deal with high ground threats. D.Va can fly up there, Sigma can toss a shield, Hog has the threat of his hook, Brawl can slam, Winston can jump, but the best Zarya can do is toss and right clicks. Now moving on to the final two heroes. For reference, when I mean low skill, high rewards, I obviously mean this in reference to the other tanks, not trying to say that these last two tanks are low skill necessarily. First up we have Roadhog. He obviously lacks in any mobility and utility for his team, and I've given him half a star for his mobility because he can at least move while healing. Speaking of his heal however, Hog thrives in dueling in this game, having the easiest pick potential in the entire game with his hook and his heal to escape with safety. Literally, all you have to do on Hog is take an angle or go on a flank, land a hook, run away, and you've likely won a teamfight. Unfortunately for Hog players, the reliance on hitting your hook is extremely important because that's where most of your value comes from. Not to mention, a single competent Ana can make your life a living hell, with Biotic Nade reducing your sustain and a Sleep Dart either interrupting your hook or punishing you after you got your kill, meaning at best, you traded. For reference, I did make a video stating that Hog was the worst hero in Overwatch 2, but that was predominantly aimed at the higher levels of play where you know how to counter Hog, and whilst I do think his reward will be lower going into 5v5, players are still going to be as unaware as ever, so if you're good with Hog in Overwatch 1, that will likely be the case going into Overwatch 2. Lastly, in first place, the hero that I believe is the easiest to climb with overall is Sigma. Sigma thrives at prolonged, ranged, angled pressure. Prolonged because of his fluid experimental barrier, kinetic grasp, and accretion that allow him to stay on angles longer than any other tank in the game. Ranged because you want to utilise his 22 meter hypersphere range to pressure from a safe distance. And angled because, well, angles are good. They split attention onto you and means you can shoot past enemy cover. Simply put, if you as Sigma just take an angle and shoot the enemy team, the amount of pressure and attention you can divert is kind of crazy. If someone dives you like a Tracer or Genji, that's where your accretion can come in as a failsafe, similar to Zarya bubble discussed earlier. Now, if you really want to climb with Sigma easily, then I strongly recommend you queue with a DPS player and or a Brig player. The reason for this is because your DPS can utilise your shield to prolong their pressure, and the Brig can also add some missing sustain. I myself as a Brig player actually duo queue with a Sigma player myself, and on maps like Rialto First Point Defense, we would literally just hold high ground as a duo and nobody could touch us. Sigma provided the range, and Brig provided the sustain, meaning if an Ashe or Soldier Pocket wanted to take the high ground, they would have to go through hell and back to get it. Dorado Attack is also fantastic for this, as you can see some examples in the background, where we would just take angles and nobody could contest us, and eventually we both at GM a few seasons ago. Well, that's the video. Shout out to CloverFour, Tikatee, and ML7 for inspiration for the video style. The links will be down below. If this video helped to raise your IQ, be sure to share it with your friends to also raise theirs. Comment down below what your rankings would look like, and if this video does well enough, I'll likely do one for supports and DPS. Until next time.